sure that this photograph of Phil was the one out of the showcase. So I went downstairs to take a look.
And found this?
Yes.
Is this the photograph you told me about? The one your brother showed you?
Yes.
Mr. Martin, would you mind telling me your story again, please? From the beginning.
My brother Phil was with the BAOR in Germany. He came home on leave, and I expected him to stay with me the whole time, the full 3 weeks. But when Phil arrived here, he told me that a service friend of his, an Irishman named Sean Reynolds, had been killed in a car accident in Hamburg. He said he'd promised the dead man that he would go over to Dublin to see his wife. He showed me a photograph of Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds. That photograph.
I see.
Well, the rest you know. Phil didn't go to Dublin, he went to Maidenhead.
And committed suicide.
I don't think he did commit suicide, Inspector.
What do you think happened?
I think he was murdered.
And who do you think murdered him, sir?
I don't know. But just for the record, Inspector, I'm going to find out.
Mr. Martin, I've spoken to the authorities in Hamburg. Also to some of your brother's colleagues. Last night I had a word with his commanding officer. There was no car accident in Hamburg. Nobody has heard of Sean Reynolds.
Well, who are the two people on the photograph, then?
I don't know. But just for the record, Miss Saunders, I'm going to find out.
Come in.
Sorry to trouble you, but Mr. Martin is here.
Larry Martin.
Yes.
Ask him to come in. Good afternoon, Mr. Martin.
Good afternoon. I hope I haven't called at an inconvenient time.
Not at all.
Mr. Talbot said you were busy.
I'm afraid one is never anything else in this business. Do sit down.
Thank you.
Do you care for a cup of tea?
No, thank you.
Well, what can I do for you?
I don't know whether you've read in the papers about a young man called Andy Wilson.
Andy Wilson? No, I don't think so.
He was shot yesterday afternoon.
Shot?
Yes. Somebody fired at him from a passing car. He's now in Middlesex Hospital, very seriously ill, I'm afraid.
Was this young man a friend of yours?
He was a friend of my brother's. They were in the army together.
Oh, I see.
Mrs. Curtis, I'll be quite frank with you. I don't think my brother committed suicide. I think he was murdered.
Murdered?
Yes.
And you think the attempt on this young man's life
I think the attempt on Andy Wilson's life is connected in some way with the death of my brother.
And do the police think that?
I don't know what the police think. Mrs. Curtis, would you be kind enough to give me the names and addresses of all the people who were staying here at the time of my brother's death?
Yes, I can get told, but to do that for you, certainly. But most of them were known to me, you know. I mean, apart from your brother, there was only one stranger in the hotel, Dr. Linderhoff.
Dr. Linderhoff?
Yes.
German?
Yes, he was.
What was he doing here, do you know?
I think he'd been ill and he was resting. He was a quiet, rather charming man. I liked him enormously.
How long did he stay with you?
About a week. He went back to Hamburg this morning.
Do you happen to know if my brother spoke to him at all?
Your brother never spoke to anyone. As I told the inspector, he kept completely to himself. I'm sorry I can't be more helpful, Mr. Martin.
Vanessa, darling, I've been talking to that temperamental manager of yours, and he tells me... Oh, I beg your pardon.
Come in, Thomas. This is Mr. Martin. My stepbrother, Thomas Quayle.
How do you do, Mr. Martin? I'm delighted to meet you. I saw your Fleet Street exhibition last year. I enjoyed it enormously.
Oh, thank you.
Vanessa, I'm sorry to disturb you. I'll drop in later.
That's quite all right, Mr. Quayle. I'm just leaving. You'll let me have that list, Mrs. Curtis?
Yes, I will.
I'm so sorry to hear about your brother, Mr. Martin. A most distressing affair. It must have been a terrible shock for you.
Yes, it was.
I understand you were under the impression he was in Ireland.
Yes, he told me he was going there.
How very odd. Are you preparing another exhibition, Mr. Martin?
No, I've been doing a lot for the advertising agencies. They've kept me pretty busy just recently.
Yes, I expect they have.
What's your line, Mr. Quayle? Are you in the hotel business?
Oh, heavens, no. I leave that kind of headache to Vanessa and our dear friend Talbot. No, I have a small antique shop in Arundel. It's not exactly a gold mine, but it keeps me out of mischief. Doesn't it, Whitey?
I'll come down with you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Doreen, the maid, that is, found a key in your brother's room this morning, sir.
Oh, thank you.
I think it must have been your brother's.
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, it's my front door key, but I lent it to my brother. Thank you very much. Thanks again. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir.
Oh, Larry, it's you.
Yeah, I was using the wrong key.
I thought somebody had the wrong flat. Oh, there's a Dr. Linderhoff waiting to see you.
Dr. Linderhoff?
Yes, were you expecting him?
No.
Well, he's been waiting nearly an hour. I told him you might be sometime, but he insisted on waiting.
Yes, all right, Ruth. Dr. Linderhoff?
Ah, Mr. Martin.
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
Not at all. It's entirely my fault. I should have telephoned for an appointment. But I've enjoyed myself looking at your excellent work.
Sit down, Doctor.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, I've been staying at the Royal Falcon Hotel. I was there when your brother died.
Yes, I know.
I'm sorry, but I don't think the coroner's verdict was a correct one. I don't think your brother did commit suicide.
But what do you think happened?
I don't know what happened, but I'm sure it wasn't suicide. The night before your brother died, I wasn't feeling too well. And also, and sometimes it gets troublesome, especially during the night. On this particular night, I had to walk along the corridor to the bathroom. The bathroom is next to room 27, the room your brother occupied. I'd been waiting for about 5 minutes, but I suddenly realized that your brother was talking to someone. He sounded tense, excited. I heard him say, "I'm going back to London. I'm not spending another minute reading that book and waiting for that friend of yours."
Go on, Doctor.
I heard a woman say, "If I were you, I'd wait, even if it means staying here for the rest of the week." And your brother said, "I'm not waiting a day longer, and that's fine."
Who was this woman? Did you recognize her voice?
Yes, I'm afraid I did.
Well, who was it?
It was Mrs. Curtis.
Are you sure about this?
Quite sure.
Did you hear anything else?
No, I was embarrassed. I made a point of not listening. After a little while, I went back to my bedroom.
What time was this, Doctor?
I said it was night just now, but of course it was morning, about 1:30.
1:30.
Just 8 hours before they found Phil.
Yes.
Doctor, have you told the police about this?
No.
But why not?
Mr. Martin, I'd be honest with you. I didn't go to the police because I don't want any publicity at the present moment. In fact, I mustn't have any, otherwise... You see, next week I'm appearing before a medical tribunal in Hamburg. I don't know if things go badly. I doubt if I shall be allowed to practice medicine ever again.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear about this.
A patient of mine has made certain allegations, false allegations, I assure you, but, well, I won't bore you with details, Mr. Martin. However, believe me, at this moment I'm in a very, very difficult situation. That's why I came to England. I wanted to rest. I wanted to prepare myself for whatever's going to happen to me.
Yes, I see.
Well, now, if you excuse me, I must catch the 7 o'clock train.
Doctor, there's nothing else you can tell me about my brother, I mean.
Nothing. I told you everything I know. There's nothing else, Mr. Martin, except...
Yes?
Except if you repeat this within the next few days, I hope you won't mention my name. After next week, it won't matter, one way or the other. Well, auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye, Doctor. Larry Martin's studio.
May I speak to Mr. Larry Martin, please?
Oh, who's speaking?
Mrs. Curtis.
Would you hold on a moment, please? It's Mrs. Curtis.
Mrs. Curtis, Larry Martin here.
Oh, Mr. Martin, I believe Arthur gave you a key this afternoon. The stupid man thought it was your brother's.
Oh, yes. We both made a mistake, I'm afraid.
I wonder, would you be kind enough to post it back to me? It's mine, and it's rather important.
Well, if it's important, Mrs. Curtis, I'd sooner deliver it myself. I want to see you again in any case.
Really? What is it you want to see me about?
My brother.
We discussed your brother this afternoon.
Well, we did indeed, Mrs. Curtis, but I don't think you were quite as frank with me as you might have been. For instance, you didn't tell me why you went to my brother's room the night before he was murdered.
I didn't go to his room.
I think you did, Mrs. Curtis.
Who have you been talking to? Who's been telling lies about me?
Now, Mrs. Curtis, much as I should like to discuss this subject, I don't think we should discuss it on the telephone. I suggest we meet tomorrow.
All right.
I'll come and see you at the hotel.
No, don't come to the hotel. Do you know Datchet?
Yes?
There's a cafe facing the green. I'll see you there tomorrow morning. We can talk then.
All right.
11 o'clock.
I'll be there.
And please, don't forget the key.
What did she say?
I'm meeting her tomorrow.
Where, at the hotel?
No, she asked me to meet her at a cafe in Datchet.
Oh, why not the hotel?
Well, I don't know.
What did she say when you suggested it? Oh, it's the bell.
Have I got an appointment?
No.
Well, go and see who it is, will you? I don't want to see anybody unless it's important.
Okay. It's Mr. Quayle. He said he met you this afternoon in Maidenhead.
Yes, he did. It's her brother.
Mrs. Curtis.
Yes, what does he want, you know?
He just said he wanted a word with you. He's got the most sweetest little dog with him.
Yes. Yes, all right. Ask him to come in, will you, Ruth?
Would you come in, Mr. Quayle?
Mr. Martin, it's really unforgivable of me dropping in like this, but I was on my way back to Arundel.
Oh,
I
that's quite all right, Mr. Quayle. It's very nice to see you again. This is my secretary, Miss Sanders.
How do you do?
Oh, isn't he sweet?
He's a darling, isn't he? Say hello to Miss Sanders, Whitey. Oh, he's not generally quite so friendly with strangers.
Can I offer you a drink?
Oh, it's most kind of you, Mr. Martin, but I really can't stay. I just dropped in to collect my key.
Your key?
Yes, Arthur gave it to you this afternoon by mistake. What the silly little man was thinking of, I really can't imagine. I told him several days ago that I'd lost the key and to be on the lookout for it.
Well, the key was found in room 27, so I suppose he thought...
Oh, he thought it was your brother's, of course. A natural mistake under the circumstances. Poor Arthur doesn't exactly scintillate at the best of times. Does he, Whitey? So if you'll just give me my key, Mr. Martin, I won't take up any more of your valuable...
Well, I'm awfully sorry, Mr. Quayle, but I'm afraid I can't do that.
Oh, what do you mean?
I haven't got the key. When I got home, I discovered the mistake, and I immediately posted it off to your sister.
Oh.
So all you have to do is telephone Mrs. Curtis, and I have no doubt she'll send it on to you.
Yes, of course. Well, once again, my apologies.
That's quite all right. You sure you won't change your mind about the drink?
Quite certain, thank you. I must get back to Arundel before it's dark. Say goodbye to Miss Sanders, Whitey.
Do you live in Arundel, Mr. Quayle?
Yes, I have an antique shop there. Do you like Arundel?
Yes, I do. Quite.
I adore it.
What happened?
Oh, I didn't see it. The car had gone when I came out of the cafe.
Oh, he won't get far. Chap here got his number.
Must have been drunk, I should think, coming up on the pavement like that. The woman was lucky.
Woman?
Yes, going straight for her it was, so they said. Oh, she looked terrible. They were just taking her into the cafe when I came out.
You got the lady's address?
Yes, sir.
Now, you're quite certain you don't want us to get hold of a doctor?
Yes, I'm quite sure. I feel perfectly all right now.
Good morning, Mrs. Curtis.
Are you the gentleman she was expecting, sir?
Yes?
This is Sergeant Macy. I'm afraid your friends had a rather nasty accident.
Yes, so I gather. What happened exactly?
Well, Mrs. Curtis was coming up the footpath to the cafe. A car suddenly went out of control and nearly knocked her down.
Did the car stop?
No, it didn't. We'll probably pick him up. Well, if you'll excuse me, sir, we better be getting along.
If I were you, I should drink your coffee.
No, I don't want it.
Would you like me to get you something else?
No.
Was it an accident?
What?
The car, what happened? Was it an accident?
Oh, yes, of course. What else could it have been?
Well, it could have been done deliberately. It could have been an attempt to frighten you, to prevent us from meeting.
You've got too much imagination, Mr. Martin.
Or too little. I can't imagine what my brother was doing at your hotel, for instance.
I don't feel very well. I'm afraid this business with the car has upset me more than I thought. If you don't mind, I'd like to go home.
I'll drive you back to Maidenhead.
No, I have my own car. I should be perfectly all right.
I really don't think you ought to drive, Mrs. Curtis.
There's nothing to worry about. I shall be quite all right when I get outside in the air. Oh, I think you have my key, Mr. Martin.
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, I'm awfully sorry, Mrs. Curtis. I seem to have forgotten it.
Larry Martin's studio.
Hello, Ruth. Larry here. Listen, I may not be back till late tonight, so don't wait for me.
Did you see Mrs. Curtis?
Yes, I saw her.
What happened? What did she say?
Nothing. Just before I arrived, somebody gave her a warning. She was almost run down by a car that didn't stop. I'll tell you more about it when I see you. Any messages?
Inspector Hyde phoned. He didn't leave a message. She's ringing back.
Yes, all right, Ruth. Goodbye.
Larry, wait a minute.
Yes?
Where are you going?
Well, if you must know, I'm going down to Arundel to see Thomas Quayle.
What are you going to see Quayle for?
I'll give you 3 guesses.
You've still got the key.
Good girl. See you later.
I should decide about the nest of tables until after my husband's seen them. Now, I know I'm safe with the lamp. I'm sure he'll adore that.
Well, if your husband's passing, perhaps he'd like to drop in and have a look at them himself.
Yes, I think perhaps we'll leave it like that. I'll ask him to call in.
And providing, of course, they're still here, we sell that sort of thing very quickly.
Yes, and they are an unusual design, aren't they?
I won't keep you a minute. Oh, Mr. Martin.
Afternoon.
When can I expect the lamp to be delivered?
The lamp? Oh, yes, on Wednesday, I should think. Yes, I should be able to manage it then. Goodbye, Mrs. Selden.
Goodbye. I'll tell my husband to call in as soon as he can.
To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure, Mr. Martin?
Well, I'm afraid I owe you an apology. The last time we met, I said that my secretary had posted your key back to Mrs. Curtis, but I'm afraid I made a mistake. She didn't.
You mean she forgot to post it?
Yes.
Oh, very odd. Miss Sanders seemed such an efficient young lady. However, I was under the impression, Mr. Martin, that it was you who posted the key and not your secretary. I beg your pardon, do sit down.
I take it you still want the key.
Well, of course I want it. It's mine. If I had a key of yours, wouldn't you expect me to return it?
If I give you this key...
If you give me the key?
Will you give me something in return?
Well, what is it you want?
Some information about my brother.
Well, what makes you think I know anything about your brother that you don't already know?
I think your sister knew Phil. I think she knew him before he went down to Maidenhead.
Well, it's quite possible. I don't know all my sister's friends, thank goodness. So I suggest you return my key, Mr. Martin, and then have a cozy little chat with Vanessa.
Well, your sister is frightened. She refuses to talk to me.
Nonsense. What on earth has Vanessa got to be frightened of?
I'll tell you what she's got to be frightened of. This morning I had an appointment with your sister at a cafe in Datchet. Just before I arrived, somebody tried to run her down in a car. Fortunately, they failed.
Is this true?
Yes.
Well, how do you know it wasn't an accident?
I don't think Mrs. Curtis thought it was an accident.
Well, what is it you want to know about your brother?
Was he a friend of yours?
I knew him.
You knew him before he went down to Maidenhead?
Yes.
Did my brother commit suicide?
No. He was murdered.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Quayle, but I think I'll take the nest of tables after all. I'm sure my husband will like them.
Very good, Mrs. Selden. I'll send them along with the lamp.
Yes. Well, if I could just have another peep at them before I finally decide.
Of course.
Thank you.
I won't keep you a minute.
I'm terribly sorry. I won't be long. And if my husband has any real objection to them, you'll exchange them then.
Of course, Mrs. Selden, of course.
And I can expect them on Wednesday along with the lamp?
Indeed you can, Mrs. Selden.
Goodbye, then.
Goodbye, Mrs. Selden.
I'm so sorry to have interrupted you.
No, it's quite all right. Mr. Quayle? Mr. Quayle? Mr. Quayle? Mr. Quayle? Mr. Quayle!